getting mad at Klay Thompson for his struggling. Jayson Tatum is shooting 34% from the field.
I mean, if it was just him being cold, that it wouldn't be that bad. Wiggins' defense is dictating Tatum's offense, and that's leading to bad shots. Paul George's voice.
Hydration is key, kids. Always keep your Golden State Warriors mug with you. Stay fresh.
That color doesn't look like it's anything natural.
Oh, that's a hypnotic. Hey, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the DNHQ Vidcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hardy. You may know me on the social media interwebs as Weaponized Joy, but originally I was the gold-blooded king. And along the way, I made some friends here, and two of my very dear friends in this whole wide world and the Warriors blogosphere. We have Dr. Thomas Bevilacqua, and all the way from the UK, Patrick Murray. They're both accomplished writers. Dr. Tom, of course, is responsible for the great epic on the 2018 Golden State Warriors championship season that was known as
Golden Age.
Golden Age.
2018 champion Golden State Warriors.
That's right, Dr. Tom. And also Patrick, known as a literary savant himself. Patrick, who used to write for?
Written for a few places, but Forbes and back in the day with you guys over at Golden State Mind originally.
That's right, folks. And if you ever want to check out any of the new writings, come over to the HQ, DNHQ.com. We're here today. It's Sunday. It's pretty warm where I'm at over here in the Bay. And it's also warm because Dub Nation's hearts have been warmed over by their team stepping up in adversity. They tied the series 2-2 in the NBA Finals with the Boston Celtics. And it was funny. After we lost Game 3, I remember a lot of fans, especially in our comments at DNHQ, who were literally saying the series feels like it's over because we were down 2-1 to Marcus Smart. And that just lets you know just how daunting of a challenge this Boston Celtics team presents. So daunting of a challenge that Andrew Wiggins had to go ahead and get a big double-double on him. He said, okay, the team needs me now. Let me go ahead and earn my match. Let me pull his stats up right now. Let me pull my stats up. Andrew Wiggins, my guy, your guy, our guy, 17 points, 16 rebounds, a team high, well, not team high, a starter's high, plus 20 on the plus minus for you analytics nerds. Andrew Wiggins out there making it happen. I'm so excited. But of course, the story is Steph Curry dropping 43 and 10 in the guide. Gentlemen, let's start with Patrick Murray. What was it like watching that game, and how are you feeling going forward?
Well, I suppose the first thing I should do, as I'm on with the prophets of Wiggins Island, is repent my sins, for I was not a believer in the trade originally. But we can come back to that. To answer your question, I mean, it was amazing. It took years. I tweeted it took years off my life. I'm not sure I'm ready for another three games of this, but as someone said in response, buckle up because here we go. But yeah, I mean, that I think was one of the all-time finals performances, not just one of Steph Curry's best playoff performances. And there are others, this myth out there that, this is the one, he's suddenly arrived. Where were you in 2015 in game 5? Where were you in 2016 game 4? Where were you in, 2018 against the Rockets game 7, 2019 game 6 against the Rockets in the semi-final when he dropped 33 in the second half? He's had many notable playoff moments, but this was, I think, as impressive a performance as I can remember almost any player dropping in the finals. And I would say, I've been watching the NBA for 30 years. I'm not going to say anything about who was before because I don't, there's something about when you watch a player and you see, but I can only think that there are two players I think that are better than, Steph is on the level that I've witnessed play, and that's Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And I genuinely believe he's up there. And, this is a great example of that. And the few kind of stragglers, non-believers, doubters who aren't just there for the attention starting to come around is quite nice, really, I think, because this is what he's always done, but he's at a whole new level at the moment.
And it's funny because we brought up the 2018 team, and because as the gold-blooded king, Mr. Weaponized Joy always likes to point out, I outside of anybody in the Durant family, probably the biggest Kevin Durant fan out there. And I said that his 2018 Game 3 was maybe the greatest single game, finals or single player performance I'd ever seen. It was either that, Duncan's near quadruple double in 2003 against the Nets was another one. But what really does and what sets this Steph one apart is the pressure and the context of it. That KD game was, that was one where he was just like, no, we're not losing this game. I'm going to win it for us. But they were up 2-0 and it was like, you knew they were going to win that series. Like you knew, okay, this team is just demonstrably better. And, it didn't have that urgency. This, you felt it was, if it's 3-1, it's not impossible, as we know, both by doing it and by having it done to us, we know it's possible, but it's going to be really hard. And so you just felt that hanging in the balance, and that Steph, whether it was carrying them in the first half and the third quarter, when they kind of couldn't get it going. And then in the fourth quarter, making it happen to close it out. It's the stakes and the circumstance. And again, it's for those of us who paid attention and who didn't dismiss Steph out of hand. This is like, Patrick, you rattle all those games off. Like, yeah, this isn't new. This is not new. But for those people who, didn't just wanted to deny it and pretend it wasn't true, and accept the fact that this, this little dude, the babyface assassin, was actually one of the transcendent player of this generation. Like now they saw it, and they can't deny it anymore. They just can't. And so it's the situation, the circumstance, doing it there, doing it on the road is another big thing. And that crowd is, hostile and extremely white. Extremely loud, and extremely tight, so it was a lot to deal with. That's a pressure cooker in the new Garden still. But it was one of the great performances of all time. It was some all-time stuff. And it's, you got to appreciate it as a fan, just recognizing this, being like, wow, I got to watch this and this guy doing this for my team. And you just got to you have these moments where you got to kind of remind yourself, like, this isn't normal. This isn't just everyday stuff.
Well, I think that's where I was so surprised, I guess you could say, where folks were, doing that. The series over, we lost, we're down 2-1. It feels disrespectful to who we have on the court. We have an all-time great. And again, I keep going back to The Last Dance. When you're watching The Last Dance and the Bulls are going through adversity, like, can you imagine watching that being like, oh my gosh, like, can Michael get through the Indiana Pacers? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's insane to look at it that way, but that's where we are in real time. So that's why I really enjoy it, because I feel like I'm watching a real time legendary action hero saving the world, at least the Bay, one dribble at a time. And one thing tactically that I thought was very interesting is it kind of reminded me back in the day in the 2016 year when Luke Walton took over as the coach. And there would be times where, like, we were trying to win like our 15th game in a row, literally. And we're just like, okay, we're on the road and hostile environment. The team, wants us, the opposing fans want us to lose so badly. And there'd be times when Steph Curry would just be like, all right, my team's out of gas. No one's getting open. The motion offense just isn't working. All right, let's do it. Pick and roll. And the way that breaks down teams is probably the most deadly action in the history of basketball. I see why Curry saves it until he needs it the most, because it's not like it's complicated. It's very simple. And, we've seen some teams do a moderately good job at mucking it up. But this particular Boston Celtics teams, with the players they have on the floor, you got guys like Al Horford and, Bob Williams, the Time Lord, coming up, trying to slow down Steph around that corner off the screen. And he is coming off the screen already shooting the ball because he knows they don't want to get too high. Like, he's figuring them out completely in that action. And I know my Boston doesn't want to trap that. I know my Boston doesn't want to jump too high on that, because God forbid he dumps it down to the Draymond or whoever for the short roll, and then they activate everybody now. And now the ball is singing around. Now we're hitting threes. Now we're getting active there. Boston doesn't want that. Boston does not want everybody on the worst to get involved. They're saying, okay, if Steph Curry beats us, he has to beat us in this very tight window. They're not giving him any room. It's a very, very tight window. But if he beats us, and he's like, oh, perfect. I love playing this way. And that's hilarious to me. That, I mean, this is the coverage he grew up, learning from Monte Ellis how to beat. You know what I mean? Like this is easy for him. So I think it's super interesting that now the series through 4 games has turned to this kind of chess match where the Celtics are like, okay, if that's going to be this, it's going to be off pick and roll threes. It's like, oh, okay. All right, sure. That'll work. Andrew Wiggins, though. if you were to tell me before the series that he would be the second best player on the team, look, I wouldn't believe you. You got Klay Thompson, you got Draymond Green, and Jordan Poole's been hooping, and Kevon Looney's been doing his thing too. Andrew Wiggins is out there throwing his weight around and looks every bit the player that Tatum and Brown have been. Now, I know Wiggins isn't shooting up a lot of shots, but in terms of his defensive pressure and his impact on the game, his impact on the boards, this dude is an elite wing player, having the time of his life in the NBA Finals. Patrick, did you see this coming?
I didn't. I mean, throughout this playoff run, as we've talked about already, the transformation of Wiggins into like super hustle guy, playing aggressively, doing the things to win is, I think, a major story. I think it's testament, yes, to the Warriors, yes, to kind of how Steph and Dre and Klay elevate teammates, but also to Wiggins, who's just like bought into whatever it is going to take to win. And that's, I think one of the reasons I was really skeptical about the trade, and I think the piece I wrote at Forbes basically said it didn't say it's like the worst move ever, but it said like this is an enormous, I think I said it's an enormous gamble. And it did at the time feel to me like an enormous gamble because he'd had 7 years in Minnesota. We had this formula that took advanced stats, compared it to the value, came out he was the most pay to production, the biggest gap between pay and production in the entire league. Interestingly for the Warriors, just as an aside, the guy who had the best one was Kevon Looney. So, he's always been he's always had an impact there. But I think, with Wiggins, I was really thinking about this and, all this kind of question about 2 timelines and do you trade the young guys and do you, and you go, there's the Spurs model where, you've got the young guy, you get Kawhi Leonard and you try and elongate it out and have this elongated run. And that's kind of the model that they've chosen. Then, there's the Lakers in the 2000s where they took their kind of players, they flipped for Shaq and some of their young assets, and they basically robbed the Memphis Grizzlies and got Pau Gasol, and that put them in 3 straight finals, right? So you make the trade and you get into finals. So, like, which one's the worst? What if the Wiggins trade is the Pau Gasol move, right? What if that robbery, which it now looks like it was, I did not see that at the time. I certainly did not say that at the time. But what if that robbery is the Gasol move that gave them the piece that put them over the top, but actually gave them like an asset in the Minnesota pick that becomes Kuminga that sets them up for a long time? They've found a way somehow to combine that kind of Lakers second, like late Kobe era rebuild and the Spurs model. And, as I say, I didn't see Wiggins becoming this good. Throughout the playoffs, he's been tremendous. He's been getting better and better. I thought he deserved to be in the All-Star team this year, and I think he's really come a long way. But I mean, here he is, biggest stage, and he's getting it done. But yeah, that was my thought. Have they threaded that needle? Is that even possible?
Well, we told him. It was like, no, just wait. Like, let's just see what this guy looks like in this environment. Let's not pretend that playing in Minnesota with Karl Anthony Towns and just this culture of I don't know what is going to bring out the best in someone. And the thing that's has been frustrating watching the kind of discourse around these finals, and especially around Tatum, because Tatum, it's interesting, like watching him, and he's played. It's like on the one hand, like I think he's averaging 20 points. It's fine. It's not like he's disappeared.
22.3 points per game.
But I mean, all of those, it's a lot of, I think I said this in the preview, like a lot of free throws, a lot of getting to the line, not high percentage. And it's what's frustrating is that everybody's saying, oh, well, when is Tatum gonna, you got to watch out. He's going to break out of this. And, he might. He's a great player. But what this is discounting is Wiggins' defense. And this is what has been. So, I mean, we saw in the regular season him, becoming a solid to very, very good defender, taking up the opposing team's best wing and really D'ing him up. But then in the playoff, this has been something different, especially the conference finals against Luka. I mean, Luka put up numbers. He's great. Of course he did. But Wiggins made him work. And every, the shots he made when Wiggins is guarding him, when he made them, you're like, that's just, you got to give it to the guy shooting it. Same thing with Tatum. He'll make some. Wait,
I'm sorry. Luka? You mean the guy Wiggins decapitated? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, you still have some time after the decapitation. So, and that's, he's able to get those buckets. But it's the same thing with Tatum. It's like, we're not, it's all about, what is Tatum doing wrong? Instead of, man, Andrew Wiggins, like this is where he's really leveled up, is he's become that defender. And I would like that to be the discussion rather than, well, Tatum struggled, but like we have some, I mean, like I said, he could have in game 5, he could pour him in, have a great game. That could certainly happen. He's a great player, good offense can beat good defense, all this other stuff. It's not that it's impossible, but we have this evidence that Wiggins is a good defender and can do enough against these elite guys to increase the margins to where the Warriors can win. And this is, I just want to hear more of that, because I feel like I'm seeing a lot about, Tatum, but it's kind of like this, just wait. And it's like, but it's not because of the bad bounces that Tatum is struggling. It's because of what Wiggins is doing and has done for these entire playoffs throughout this season. And so we have, this is the stat is like sample size and evidence. We have the evidence. We've seen this. We know. And so like, just maybe think, don't just discount what he's doing. And that's the thing where, as the like co-president of Wiggins Island, along with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Hardy, this still surprises me. The defense, the offense, even the rebounding, because that's just a byproduct of his athleticism. I'm like, all right, this makes sense that he comes to this place, that switch gets flipped, and he's just more involved because once again, he's out of Minnesota. The defense, this is where I'm like, wow, like this, he's shown, and it's consistent too. That's the other thing. It's been consistent. So even those of us who liked the Wiggins trade from the beginning, who thought this guy's going to be interesting on this team, in this role, that's the thing where I'm still like, wow, I did not see that coming.
Well, I mean,
sorry. I was just saying, you made some really good points in there. I think the things that have really surprised me on defense, yes, but the point about doing the things in the margins that make you win, it feels like he's almost the opposite player to what he was for so long in Minnesota, where he did like all the empty stats thing that gets you paid, but not all the kind of little margin things, the defense, the 50-50 balls, the boxing out properly to get the rebounds, the hustle, the diamond, like that's the stuff that has really blossomed. And I do think, like, even with the culture switch from Minnesota to Golden State, it's still really rare. What, he was in his 7th season, maybe, I think. I'd have to go back and check, but that many years into the league to like effectively change your game so much, I think that is really impressive, because you see it sometimes where a team gets, they draft the wrong franchise, they get flipped after a couple of years, and they're still like 19, 20, 21. There's plenty of time for them to change and learn in a different environment. But I think having had so many years ingrained in that system to then come out but maybe it was, it was waiting there, and he just needed that environment to blossom. But yeah, it's as you say, it's the margin, the stuff in the margins, it's the defense, it's all of that stuff that is, I think, so impressive and you don't see on a losing team, right? And it's just being around winners, I guess, and he's learned from all the players that are in this environment.
It's funny. It's in a way we're always just comparing things. It helps us to better understand or give us a context. This is like, I think any is going to maybe people raise some eyebrows, but I think about the player Andre Iguodala was before he came to Golden State versus who he was on that Warriors team. It wasn't the same narrative about that we had about Wiggins, about, being this overpriced, overpaid, but whatever, all this stuff. But as somebody who, goes from that sort of athletic wing to then he comes to Golden State and he becomes this glue guy, the key to the death line, all this sort of stuff. And you think about culture and you think about when did that happen? Well, so again, sorry, Daniel. This really was a Steve Kerr thing when he took Andre Iguodala and turned him into this, like, okay, you're going to come off the bench, but like you're also super important too. And he maybe, he got through to Wiggins to kind of get that transformation. And I think that, when we think about the comps and what that is, I think that's for some reason, just because we witnessed it, kind of comes to mind of the player Iguodala became, going from Philly and Denver to then who he became, especially starting in that 2015 run.
Well, I think it's a great example of a guy changing his game to fit the Warriors system, actually, making the Warriors system greater. One thing I love about Wiggins is you can tell that he really, really cares not only about the game, but about his teammates. And there's a clip that's going around right now about that ridiculously daggerous shot that Curry hit on Brian White. His name Brian White? Derek White. That basically, I think, put us up 2 scores and basically signals to the crowd, like, you're going to lose. But on that shot, that's the one where it's like a fast break. They find Steph. He kind of like catches it quick and just shoots that thing. And like White's like this, that's not a good shot at all. As Paul George would say, that's a bad shot. He drills it. But if you look at the replay, as Steph is taking the shot, everyone, the popcorn man, the fans, the coach, everyone just looks up like, what the hell? Like, there's no way. And then Wiggins is running full speed to get the rebound. When I saw that clip, there's a synergy there that Wiggins has with this team where he's like, okay, y'all don't need me to put up, all these points, although he is averaging 16 points per game in the finals. Not bad. I'll work on defense. And obviously, as you guys mentioned, the job he's doing on Jayson Tatum is ridiculous. Jayson Tatum right now is, let me show these stats per Basketball Reference. He's averaging 22, 7, and 7 on 34% shooting from the field. 34% shooting. Like people are getting mad at Klay Thompson for his struggling. Jayson Tatum is shooting 34% from the field.
I mean, like I said, like if it was just him being cold, that it wouldn't be that bad. It's forcing him to change his game. Like his Wiggins' defense is dictating Tatum's offense, and that's leading to bad shots. Paul George's voice, but it's leading to a bad shooting percentage.
And if Wiggins is so good that he can basically not wipe out, but neutralize a star of stars like Jayson Tatum is, I think we have to start looking at what that means for the Warriors going forward. This is, as Patrick talked about with the Pau Gasol thing there. Mm-hmm. You have someone who can take elite wings and basically kill their efficiency. Like, he has a badge that's like destroy stars efficiency. Like, that's an insane piece for this Warriors team to have. The defensive statistics right now, the Warriors are locking Boston up. It doesn't feel like it in the games. It feels like Boston's getting everything. It's like they get every corner three. It feels like from White and Horford and all things like that. But you look at the stats at the end of the game, you're like, actually, they shot like trash. And really, apart from a historically elite fourth quarter or two they've put together, they haven't been able to score on the Warriors at all. Like, really. And credit to the Boston defense for, limiting some of what the Warriors are doing. But it's a really good sign if Stephen Curry is shooting 50% from the field, 49% from three-point range, and Boston knows he's the man. Meanwhile, Boston started struggling so much. In a defensive battle, as we saw back in the 80s and 90s, the team with the star playing better wins these type of series because the defense is so crazy. Stephen Curry stepping up, and I'm not sure if Tatum and Brown are at that level where they can get through, but it's not a knock on them necessarily. It's more of a credit to Wiggins. But speaking of defense, Draymond Green got a lot of flack, especially in our Slack channel. I was like, what's going on? Like, he's not even looking for the shot. He's out there. he still had 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals, and was monumental down the stretch there. What do you guys think of how Draymond is dealing with this series, the matchups there, and where do you see Draymond being the most effective going forward?
I mean, I'm a glass, guess I'm a little more of a glass half full guy because so I always think about I had my senior year of high school, my English teacher, she said, I turned an essay and I didn't do as well as I liked, and I was frustrated. And I remember she said, and I think I was getting down on myself. And she's like, you know, you can do this. You didn't just get a case of the stupids. You can do this. And I think about that with Drake, especially with offense. I was looking at it, and it's like, again, he doesn't need to be Steph or Clay or Wiggins. That's not what he has to do. But this is just, it's a rut, but it's also so anomalous. Even if you look at how he's played this entire postseason, it so stands out. So I was reading before we started recording, I was looking over Kerr's comments when he made that move to hold him back on the bench at the end of Game 4. And he was saying, that this matchup with Boston, what they can do, how they defend him, they can take away what he does best in terms of the offense, in terms of being there sort of at the top of the key and initiating things. And I think that really says to me that, okay, they're looking now, and, and rightfully so, because, he's got 3 rings. This guy's a great player, Draymond Green. They think, well, his greatness can win out. You'll have bad games, but it'll win out. Now maybe they're thinking, okay, now it's time to make the move to do something different with how we use him. And as I was saying, he's a great player. He will be able to affect the series in other ways and as a positive impact. It's just they've got to kind of tinker and find it. So that's what I'm really curious to see going into Game 5 is what they do with Draymond on offense. On defense, he had some in that. I'm specifically thinking Game 4. There were some lapses, but then in the fourth quarter, he was great. And so you're not worried about that. If he can just give you maybe a little more score or just a little less disruption of the offense, I think that's like I said, I'm glass half full. Maybe I do think that what Kerr holding him and that they navigated that because, imagine, there's another coach doing that with a player like Draymond. It might totally destroy the team. If you're here's this key player, I'm holding him back in the fourth quarter of an important game. But that they couldn't speaks to the trust that's built and the way that, that Kerr, again, internet might want to deny it, but the guy can coach. And so I do believe that he can come in maybe with this kind of renewed sense of purpose back at home, feed off of that energy. And he can have, again, I don't think he's going to be, he's going to put up 45 points, but I can see him having one of those Draymond games where it's he's doing everything. But more importantly, he is this a connector. Keeping the flow going so that then the ball gets to Clay in the rhythm and then he shoots the 3 and it's Draymond gets the assist, or maybe it's a pass to someone else who then gets it. It keeps that rhythm going. And so I'm kind of poised. I'm hoping and I believe we'll see that. But I just also think, this is a tough matchup for him based on what Boston wants to do and what can do. And it's on now the coaching staff and Draymond to say, okay, this isn't just something we can kind of power through. We have to make decisions and choices to counteract it.
Well, real quick, I think especially considering the fact that Boston has used or utilized this make Steph beat us with the high pick and roll thing. Yeah. Historically, the reason that, Draymond had crazy, not the reason I say, but something to help him. Steph Curry gets trapped, right? And then he gets a little quick short roll and then get the 4-on-3 where Draymond's probably the best in the world besides maybe LeBron James or Giannis in navigating that. There were so many times Draymond would just rack up assists, or get points off that little short roll. And Boston isn't for the most part, not giving it up. You know what I mean? So now it's like, okay, Steph maybe can't get what he wants right there. He goes to Draymond. Draymond catches the ball. Steph's trying to get open again. They're not letting him because they're a long defense. Now Draymond's looking around, clock's running, and Al Horford or Williams at in the paint with his hands up, dare you to shoot. That's not Draymond's best part of his game. But go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think so. Our first thing to say is I'm glad I don't have to play in a finals game tomorrow because this podcasting stuff is really distracting. Doing half an hour is, I couldn't possibly do anything else. But yeah, so for me, I think so. There's this narrative that he probably is not bringing the right effort and intensity and energy. And certainly, in game 2, he came out with that. And really affected that game. So it's, it does feel a little strange, right, to see him slightly throttled back in a way. But I do think the death of Draymond Green is massively overrated. This is a guy who just locked up the 2-time MVP. Now you can argue whether or not, he, that's a reasonable title, but Jokic is a handful. He locked him up. Then in the Mavs series, putting on Brunson meant that it basically completely took out the Mavs secondary playmaker and offensive system. And this how are we going to guard Luka? How are we going to stop the Mavs? It was a cakewalk. So the guy is still there now. He is 32. So he's coming off, and I think everyone's also forgetting he's coming off 2.5 months out with a back problem, which probably has he's got most of the way back, but I'm not convinced he's as energetic and dynamic as he was at the beginning of the season, for example. So there might be something there. But having said that, this is a matchup that is really difficult for him because he is, and we've seen this before in other series, right? He's dealing with three specific types of players who are types of players who do give him problems. So one is Al Horford, stretch big, who's big and mobile and can shoot. He's all, that's always been a challenge, because he likes to roam off people, play the helper, all that stuff, be the, this great help defense guy. If he's on Horford, that ain't happening, right? Because Horford's just drilling his over 40% from three, especially when he's getting a short corner threes. That's, so that's one problem. Then he's got to deal with Jaylen Brown, who just, physically, athletically is really powerful, really big, really strong, and a really, really good player. So that is, he's got his hands full there. And then you've got Robert Williams, Time Lord, who, he blocks everything, right? So, and again, athleticism. So Draymond, he's got a disadvantage in terms of the athleticism where he's going up against these guys. And what I thought was really interesting in what they did with the lineup change to start the game, and Otto Porter didn't play very well. I think he will play a lot better. He's played really well at home in this series, and generally role players do tend to play better. But you essentially ended up with one non-shooter on the floor, and everyone else could hit shots. And I think this is the way to go in this series, because basically you have Dre and you have Looney, and at the end you might want to play them together for defensive purposes, but you can kind of spread the floor a bit more without giving up too much on defense. And then you've got one player who can kind of whether they play in the dunker spot, whether they play in the off the roll. There are kind of options there that you can do. And then I think you get to, what we saw. I do think there was maybe a little bit light of fire under him because he's, on the bench. But also, it's really hard going against those players, all those players who've got all this youth and energy and athleticism for 40 minutes a game. You play in 30, 35 minutes a game and Looney 20 minutes a game. 25, because you play them together a bit, you might 25 minutes a game. That actually works out pretty well for the Warriors, I think. So there are ways they can get him involved. He'll be better. I think he'll be better. I think he will be better the next 3 games. But for me, that is there might be something to do with still lingering. It's not all the way back from that injury. But I think it's largely the matchup. And Tom, you're right. You've got to make some schematic adjustments. They've started doing that. I think that we'll see a more energized, more unlocked Draymond Green as a result. And I suppose the one thing I did, because this is the bit that is the worry about the long term for the Warriors, right? Is Draymond Green, Clay's always going to be able to shoot, Steph's always going to be able to shoot. Draymond Green, energy, athleticism, as the athleticism starts to wane a bit, still got the brain, absolutely the highest IQ player I think I've probably ever seen, certainly on defense. What happens then? Well, you need those players around him that, imagine if you had Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams and that youth and athleticism and power I wonder where you could get some players like that in a year or two's time. Might James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga turn into those sorts of players?
Okay, Pat. Okay. Is it just me? Is it just me? Or when you're okay? Look, shout out to the Warriors. Shout out to the Warriors for winning that last game. That looked bad the whole time. I was like, I was still believing. Obviously, with the fan base that we believe, I was looking like, so we can't get anything but Steph Curry out of the pick and roll. Oh, that's not good. Was it just me? Or when Looney and Dre were exhausted, sending those picks, like jogging down the roll, and the Celtics weren't worried about them, didn't you wish you had some athleticism rolling to the rim? Someone can catch a lob, perhaps, like Wiseman or Kuminga. Dude, if these young, freakish athletes can at least run the pick and roll with Steph, they're going to be all-stars.
I would love to see some Kuminga in this series, actually, to be honest, because I think that, the youth and the athleticism and power that he can bring, even if it's a short stint, like, when you're getting Bielitsa, and bizarrely Bielitsa appears to be able to defend not just Luka Doncic, but also Jayson Tatum. I mean, who saw that coming, right? But like, that feels to me like you're living on borrowed time there. So it's probably too late in the series now to do this. And Kuminga, it's been a bit bumpy in the playoffs, but I think this, you could throw him out here for a few minutes at the beginning of the second, see how it goes, because he can give you some of that dynamism, some of that power, some of that athleticism, and actually a different way of attacking the basket that might cause the Celtics some problems because he can match some of that athleticism they've got in the paint. So I'd love to see. Are you
a little worried about the inexperience? Boston's hella smart. Are you worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a risk, but then I mean, you're talking about. I think I tweeted like having 5 minutes of Bielitsa, the biggest fourth quarter of in years, felt like an eternity. I don't know. Like you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know like if he's killing it in practice or when they're practicing or not. So you can't say. But it's probably too late now to do that. And I think by losing game one, it put them in this hole where they repeatedly coming back. So I don't it probably isn't quite there. But like. He could give them a jolt when they need it. And I felt like I think the disappointing thing about the losses and why I kind of do understand why people are like, oh my God, this is really bad, is like the nature of the losses where they didn't quite seem to have that intensity and that effort. And, Kuminga can go one of two ways, right? It can be like, he can give you that massive jolt and he can like energize you and do some really good stuff. Or he can be like quite ineffective, floating, not really know what he's doing with blow effect. But, he does that. After a minute, take him out, and you've got to find those minutes somewhere. If this is going 6 or 7, which are almost, definitely going 6. If it's going 7, like that's, there is a point here that Boston have been running. They've had 2 7-game series already. They're running basically a 6.5-man rotation. You have got a bit of an advantage potentially here if you can elongate out the rotation a little bit. And Moody would be, you feel safer with Moody on the floor, right, than Kuminga at the moment, given he plays like a vet. But there are some options to kind of maybe just stretch it out a little bit and at the end of the games have a bit more of that energy to match Boston's effort, because in those fourth quarters they have brought it and the Warriors just haven't. They've kind of almost let go of the rope a little bit in certainly game 1 and game 3. And
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little excited to see Wiseman. When I saw Wiseman warming up, a little thing, I was like, uh-oh.
Well, and I think it's interesting to think back to the 2017, 2018 and the way they filled out the rosters. It was with a lot of bigs where you could mix and match. And because they didn't have Clay to start the season, because they knew they were going to have to kind of make some of that up in terms of that 2-3 guard spot, they had to use those spots on more wing guys. And this is where, not to get to channel Angry Warriors Twitter, why didn't we trade everybody for like a mediocre big man? But this is where you wish it's just about the roster spot, and they could have picked up if they didn't have to say, well, we've really got to stitch this together while Clay, whether we don't have him or when he's not playing back to back. Because I think there are or would have been big men available who, could have given this kind of like what you're talking about, somebody who can catch a lob, who can just do, I'm thinking in that JaVale McGee kind of mode, or a sort of a David West steady hand kind of pick and pop guy. But you couldn't do it because you had to keep all of these guards because you had the Clay, and then what happened with Steph after the Boston game in San Francisco. And so that's what's, I think that's another thing that makes this just such a tricky matchup, or made it a tricky matchup for the Warriors, is that you just had this roster that had to be so sort of stocked with, again, in the same way that when it was the 2017-2018 Warriors, you mixed and matched the big men. Now it's like, we got to mix and match, okay, there's going to be times where Gary Payton II is going to be this key guard. Then sometimes it would be Damian, and, you're doing all, and then it's Jordan Poole, and, it's all this mixing and matching. Whereas in the past, that would be, would be a big man and be like, oh, and was it 2018? I think they, Zaza's the starting guy, but I think in the finals that, in game 1 or game 2, they went with McGee because he was just getting to the rim. And so it's just the way the roster had to be. And this is 100% not a knock on the Warriors front office. They made the right decision. They're in the finals with this roster, but you're like, oh, this is where, if you had Clay for an entire season and you knew he was, totally all this sort of stuff, you could have, maybe one of those guard spots could have been a big man, and you get that, it wouldn't be as athletic as Wiseman, but you'd have somebody else who could come in, catch a lob, bring that energy, but you're not worried about that inexperience that you get with Kuminga, because that can be so, like you said, so sort of, it can go two ways, and you just worry what happens. You put a guy out there sort of so fresh in the league, and these pressure cooker minutes, and what's going to happen to him, and how's he going to react? And he's he's 19, 20 with that. I think I've said, but these 19, 20 year olds, I could barely handle doing my own laundry at 19 or 20. And it's like, go out there, not just in an NBA game, but in a finals game, geez, so I just think there's circumstance also led to this being a particularly tough matchup with what just the Warriors had to do and had to be this season.
I completely agree with that. And that's why, as Patrick keeps trying to remind Dub Nation, this year is great, but down the road, we may see the greatest iteration of this team yet, with the combination of the veteran savvy still being, in their primes, and the young guys developing at the same time. I mean, I don't think even the Spurs did this good. So we'll see. We'll see down the road. So as we're going to wrap this bad boy up, what are your predictions for the rest of the series? I'll start with you, Pat.
So I said on the last pod at the beginning of the finals, Warriors probably, I thought 7, maybe 6. I mean, it feels probably 7, but you could see game 6 Clay showing up. I do think, I think they'll win game 5. I do think they can still win the series if they don't win game 5. I mean, obviously it'd be much more difficult, but I think we'll get a different team than the kind of letdown we've seen after the games. And I certainly, one thing I thought, I looked at you look at the Boston bench as in the fourth quarter, as Steph Curry's raining down threes. They didn't look very happy. They didn't look like this series was tied. They looked like they were getting beaten. So I think there's something there. I'm sticking to my prediction. I think we're going to get back more out of Draymond Green. I think we're going to get more out of Jordan Poole. He seemed to find some seams in the defense, taking the mid-range a bit more in the last game, which I think is really promising. 2 of the games at home, they've been really good at Chase Center. Yes, they lost game 1, but they kind of let go of the rope in the fourth quarter in a quite a strange way, I thought. So, I'm feeling pretty confident after my prediction after game 4. I will say I'm feeling more confident in my prediction after game 4 than I was after game 3, that's for sure. But, that's, as a 7-game series, these things are seesaws. They go back and forth, You're going to lose 3 games if it goes 7. So you get buckle up.
we made it look too easy against the Cavs, and now it's I think I tweeted this after game 1. I was like, well, people picking 6 or 7. This is how you get to 6 or 7. Is a team, you lose a game, and I sort of said this. It's so frustrating. It's like you hear the media, they're like, oh, this is going to be a close series. Boston's really good, and then it's like the Warriors lose game 1, and they're like, oh, they're terrible. There's no way it's like, but you all were predicting a close series. This is how you get the close series. So I think I'm kind of in line with you. Like I'm seeing game 5. I'm hoping for this like kind of comeback Draymond Green game. I still think Steph, you go through like, and everybody's like, oh, can Steph keep doing this again? He's been doing it for 4 games. I mean, he kicked like 45s, a little more than the 30 he put up in games 1 and 3. And then, in 29, he only put 29 in game 2. So like, I still think he keeps it going. And then you get it to game 6 Clay. And I mean, I don't know. So like I picked 6. I said 6 was, that was my prediction. So I'm going to ride with it. And so I think, you go home, you got, Otto Porter, Jordan Poole, they're more likely to play a little better in front of the home crowd in that environment. And kind of to your point, Pat, about looking at the Celtics bench, I do think I hate to, let's see, what's the way to put it? Like in the same way that, and I think when, we talked about this with Marcus Thompson about where kind of that 2016 finals and where it went wrong and where they were like, okay, we get up 3-1 and this thing's a wrap. And they just, because of the Draymond, LeBron and Brian Windhorst narking on Draymond, getting the suspension, which But I think the Celtics were like thought that was the move. It's like, okay, we can get up 3-1 and like, they're little, maybe they're just going to, say, well, this team got us. They're going to take their foot out, whatever. And I think that they like, there might be a little of that where they're like, damn, this was our chance. This was the chance to really put to do this. And they didn't do it. And so now they're like, so now they're going back to where, they won game 1, but I do feel like, there was no Gary Payton II, who has played well in the series. And, and like you said, that fourth quarter was sort of just kind of a collision of a lot of bad things. So, you're thinking that, and then this is a championship team with you say, okay, if the Warriors can win game 5, they're up 3-2. This is a championship team that knows has closed out on the road before. And you've got this, maybe we're buying into too much myth, but game 6 Clay is there. And so you got it. If you're Boston, you're thinking, like we had this chance and we let it slip. And sometimes, when it's a close series, when you're a great team and they're a great team, and that's the margin. That's how small it can be. So, just to go back, I picked 6. I said Warriors in 6. It could go 7. And like you said, if they lost, I wouldn't be surprised, if they go, if the Celtics win game 5, Warriors can certainly go into Boston again in game 6 and get it back. But I like where, I like the way the Warriors are trending. I think what they can do is more sustainable. They're able to win their way. When Boston, when they won, it just hasn't felt like it hasn't been like, oh, this is what they wanted to happen. It felt like it's more about, and so I'm just like, I think the Warriors what they do is more sustainable, and that's how they're going to win. So, I think, game 5, we win it in Boston. Like I said, I predicted it. I'm going to stick with my guns.
Yeah. I second that. Warriors in 6. I was trying to go towards 5, which would have been possible if in game 1 they didn't blow that 20-point lead, whatever it was. I'm not afraid of this Boston team. I respect them very much. So I'm not afraid of them in the way that there was some fear for those LeBron Cavaliers teams, and there was some fear of the Raptors. There is a type of team that can just nonstop surge against the Warriors because of either a transcendent star, elite physical advantages. And we saw a lot of that with the OKC team in 2016, where it's like, okay, they can do this all night. They can just be bigger, faster, and stronger than us and hit threes. Well, not looking good for us. But in each one of those scenarios, eventually this team figures you out. And I think people don't give the Warriors a lot of credit for that. Not only are they gritty, they have heart, they have, some of the greatest players of all time, but the intellect through the entire franchise and on players on the court. You got Andre Iguodala as a secondary coach, you know what I mean, out there talking to folks. And so when you have it together, plus, Steph doing miraculous shots, it has to be demoralizing for the other team when they realize like the worst thing that we could do is beat the Warriors once or twice, because then we can probably never beat them that way again, because they're going to figure it out, like, the T-1000 in Terminator. And I foresee, clearly through 4 games, Boston isn't getting scoring done. I foresee game 5 being a blowout. I think there's going to be a tactical adjustment and the Warriors are going to make. And I think it's going to be something like along the lines of, let Jayson Tatum go for 60. We're not going to leave anybody else open. Let him do it. Like, he's going to come out, full out steam. Let Jayson Tatum shoot them out the game. Because, Mamba mentality. I'm going to assume that this is one of those games that down the road we look back at as, oh, wow, that was the game that Tatum and Brown realized they couldn't play together. Like, it's going to be one of those moments. That's what I'm believing in. I feel like pressure makes people default to who they really are. And when I look at Tatum and Brown, I look at 2 highly talented players with bright futures who, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, they're going to try to beat you with iso ball. And you don't beat the Warriors that way. You have LeBron and Kyrie Irving. I think eventually it will be a snowball of events where they try to sell out on Curry because they have to. I mean, he destroyed them in front of their home city. They have to trap him, right? And then you finally unlock the Warriors' regular offense where now it's like, oh, everyone's eating the balls, moving, we're getting layups, we're getting dunks. And the avalanche happens again. You can't keep these guys down forever. That's just my prediction. I see a blowout at home. Well, hell, the last time we were home, we blew them out too, right? The game's over in 3 quarters. The Warriors still haven't put together, maybe outside that game too, the game where we all sit back and go, that's the Warriors I know. Give Boston some credit. But also, I think the Warriors are shooting like 30% on corner threes or something like that, something crazy. Eventually, this team will be this team that we know and love. So that's my prediction. Blowout in game 5, a close one in game 6, close it out. I don't think we ever see Boston in the finals again until the son of Paul Pierce rises from the ashes. That's my thing there. That's my prediction. But ultimately, I want to thank you 2 gentlemen for bringing, obviously, the humor, the love for your team, and also the great analytical understanding of what basketball is and the personalities and chemistry they're in. I think it's something that is sorely missed in basketball discourse. And I think it helps out our fan base, all our loyal fans and Dub Nation who supports at HQ. Thank you so much. Without you guys, there is no us. And I hope that, even though it's nerve wracking and it's tough and it's very frustrating, I mean, I feel nervous too. But you know what I do? I just say, Steph Curry's got me. Klay Thompson's got me. And Andrew Wiggins got me too, baby. Wiggins Island for the win. And Steve Kerr, who coached his ass off that last game. So, hey, sure, you can be nervous if you want to, but if you can believe in Monte and B Diddy and J Rich, you can believe in these guys too. Okay. Maybe some of y'all weren't fans then. Anyway, thank you to my guys here. And next time I see you, hopefully you got something to celebrate. So thank you, folks. And let's go Dub Nation HQ.